Okay, another morning. We're gonna have coffee here at Ryan Dungey. I got a mug now. This is big time. So I'm like in the family. Yeah.
You're dialed in. Finally, all those other mugs wasn't doing it. Had to cook you out.
No. The setup. The mugs didn't have the right setup.
That's right.
So you actually sent me coffee now, and I have Accelerate and Rev. Can you explain the RD coffees? What is the difference? How do you have different roast flavors?
Yep.
What do we call that?
Yeah, just different roasts, different origins. Accelerate is from Peru. That was the first roast in our lineup from the beginning, and it's actually been the best seller so far as well, which has been cool. But just has like a touch of little bit of sweetness to it, a little bit of fruity notes. I don't know if you can tell that or not. But the Rev is just more of a really kind of a bold, smooth, a little bit, just with a good balance. So just a little bit bolder, a little smoother. So, a little bit, one end of the spectrum, wanted you to try both and get a good idea. So
does bolder mean more jolt, more caffeine? Does it actually affect that part, or is it just a taste thing?
No, just a little bit stronger taste, but without the bitterness. So just still, you want that kind of that strength, but without, no bitterness, and just for it to be really smooth. And that's kind of the compliments we got back from it. And that was kind of the goal from the beginning is, you don't want to, you want to accomplish the goal without sacrificing any areas. So it's tough, but we struck the balance.
Are there like roasts that you attempted that are, as the editors would say, they're on the cutting room floor? Did you make some stuff and say, oh, this is horrible? Is that part of the process of getting to where they're good?
For sure. Initially, the beginning, trying to hone in on, because the roast profile is like a suspension setting. I mean, there's thousands and thousands of different ways that you can create that roast profile. So in doing so, there's a couple times I went past the point and burnt the heck out of the coffee. That didn't taste good. And then when you under roasted too, that's obviously not great either. So it's just trying to find that pivotal spot. And we could have stopped in a lot of spots, but I felt like this, with all the coffees, we try to strike the balance of, for it to be smooth, non-acidic, not burnt tasting. So that's the thing with specialty coffee. It's not necessarily we're going after a dark roast, light roast, medium roast. We're trying to find that fine-tune area with each origin and just bring out the maximum. So getting a little nerdy out on you here, but it's the ins and outs that makes it exciting too. So
well, I just think it's always funny that like we talked about a million times, it's not you just putting your name on the bag, like you actually developed this in your own house, which I think is hilarious and cool in its own way. As far as Supercross goes, they actually had a 2-week break, which has never been done in Supercross. And on the outside, we're like, oh, everybody's going to be rested and recovered, whatever. But look, especially you, we pretty much expected you to be the same Ryan Dungey every race all the time. You were like fourth, worst case scenario. You were between 1 and 4, no matter what. You always feel like the same Ryan Dungey because it always looked like the same guy every week? Or did you ride the highs and lows and did a weekend off help? Or were there times you were tired? Were there times you felt fresher or more strong? How did that work through essentially a 10-month racing season?
Yeah. I mean, it's pretty taxing on the body, physically and mentally. But the one thing that I found kind of grounded in was just being consistent. That was one thing that Eldon had taught me, is just like before working with Eldon, a lot of times I would go off of how I felt. So, Monday morning, I felt I'm going to take it easy this week. And then the next week I'd hit it hard and I was so up and down. But the one thing that I think was extremely important is just being consistent, because fact is Monday morning, you're going to feel tired. I mean, you race Saturday night at 10 o'clock at night. Sunday, you traveled, barely got any sleep. So Monday, you're going to ease into it and you're not going to feel that great. But it was amazing. You didn't feel great starting the day, but you'd feel awesome at the end of the day. So there was highs and lows all the time, whether it was, mentally tired, physically. But I think a lot of people say, oh, you need to listen to your body. But I just found if I listen to my body, the fact is you're going to be tired a lot of the times. And of course, yeah, if you're sick and stuff, take it easy. But you got to realize too, if a guy came off a win of the weekend, man, he's on a high, he's feeling excited. He's going to probably feel great Monday morning, right? And if you didn't have a great
body
weekend,
is the same. Like he did the same exact amount of volume, right? It's all mental.
Yes.
Yeah.
And yeah, a lot of it is mental. And if you had a bad result, man, that Monday morning is probably going to be lacking some motivation. So it's, you just got to keep that in check. But yeah, there's a lot of highs and lows for sure.
Okay, so we would see you get that podium level result almost every race. You weren't a guy that would get 10th one week and second or first the next. But inside of all that, were there races where you're like, man, the way I was feeling, I can't believe I got a third? Or the way I was feeling, I think I should have won and I can't believe I got a third? Because you always seem the same, but was it actually not like that? Inside, did you feel totally different some weeks compared to others?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, towards the later end of my career, I felt like I always felt tired coming to the main event.
Really?
Yeah. I just like, I don't know if the kid energy left me or something, but it was like, usually we, and I was also going to bed early during the week. So it's just, the days got to be long. So, and not to mention the stress, you had more obligations over time. So it's just like your energy was getting pulled in all these different directions on race day. And so I found it hard to sleep on race day too, just because my mind was just running, and that probably didn't help me out. But at the same time, I think over the course of time, I realized a habit that would happen. And it actually, like, I would do really good on some nights where like I had an excuse, right? Like, and not an excuse for people, but internally it's like, I'm coming down with a little bit of a sickness, I got to cut myself some slack. Or man, I had a collarbone injury in St. Louis, and I ended up getting second. And I was like, how the heck did that happen? And when I kind of dived in deeper, I realized I was sabotaging my own success. And the nights that things were going great, we were the fastest in the heat, we were doing great. We should have won that night, but I would kind of, freak myself out or mentally, overthink it and, put all this pressure on me and cause a mistake. So I realized over time, like I was the one causing my results not to be so great. Now, I wasn't in control of everything, but I realized that every time I had an excuse or something internally, like I would do great that night. And then when I had everything going for me, I wouldn't do great. So I know that's a lot in a little bit, but I was thinking just like, I had some mental coach training as well that helped me out, is to realize that, like, dude, you're sabotaging your own success. You can go out and do it. You're just psyching yourself out. So anyway.
Oh, we've heard those stories a million times. A guy will be sick and then he'll actually have a good race. And it's like, well, physically, he certainly had to be off, but maybe just not having the pressure, being like, hey, man, whatever I get is what I get, instead of this is my night. I must win. If I don't win, it's not going to be good. So is that kind of what it was? Like if you take that pressure off because you had a little injury or a little illness, suddenly you rode better?
Yeah, it's exactly that. You just take the pressure off and you go from like, I have to win that night, and then you go to, well, I'm battling some things. I'm just going to go give it my best. And at the end of the day, that's all you can do. Your best is your best. And so you kind of like strip off all the negative and get rid of all that junk. And so it's actually kind of funny. You just simplify it and you ride better. And so I think that's the reason why, you see some guys who maybe have battling something, they do ride better. And but they'll figure that out.
You had told me when you were thinking even of coming back and racing Supercross, you were saying like nothing gives you that, almost that fear of like, man, I don't know if I can do this. And then when you're done, you feel so good. And then you mentioned the Monday morning after the race, you're like, man, I don't know if I can do this. And when you're done, you feel so good. I even went riding with my kid yesterday. When I'm loading up in the morning, look, going riding is not easy, man, right? You got to check these bikes. You got to do maintenance. You got to make sure you got the gear. You got to make sure you got all this stuff. And you're like, man, I just don't feel like doing this. But when we got back at the end of the day, I was so glad. Like there was nothing on earth I could have done that would have made me feel that accomplished. So it sounds like that's something, it's so funny at my level and then your level, you deal with that exact same thing. Like you don't want to do it. And then when you do it, that's what makes it feel so good.
Yeah. Yeah. It's comparable to a lot of things. I mean, yeah, just like your experience and training.
But you go into a Supercross main event is like that same feeling of like, I don't want to do this. But then 20 minutes later, you're so glad you did.
Yeah. I mean, there's just a lot of, there's a lot to get through. And I mean, thankfully in my position, I had a lot of people help with a lot of those areas working on the bike. And so I could minimize that, but like at the same time, I mean, there's so many things that mentally you're also, another example was, whether it was dealer signings or you don't realize like all these things that can weigh on you, instead of saying like, I have to go do this or I have to go through this, like, no, do it. You get to do this. I think that's a really important perspective. And so, yeah, there's a lot of things that are there's a lot of things to accomplish to get to that point. it's hard. It's not easy, right? But you have to overlook it. You have to kind of keep pushing, and you know, that was always a challenge, sure, of course. You know, I mean, the little things.
But
So
once you eventually did that 1,000 times, once you're like, okay, every Monday I feel this way in the morning, and then I feel great at the end of the day, and every race day I feel nervous, and then at the end of the night I feel awesome. Once you did that 1,000 times, could you always convince yourself Monday morning, this is the way I'm going to feel now? It'll be fine in 8 hours. I'll be glad I did it. Could you eventually just almost see the future of like, I know it will be okay because I've done this before?
yeah, for sure. I mean, I think it's a little bit of a mental, like it is mental, right?
Mm-hmm.
But it's that mental toughness of like, you know, just, you know, do the work, put in the time, you know, training. We're talking about training. The
Yeah.
very beginning of everybody who started training, it's probably like, I don't want to get out of bed. I don't want to do this, but you do it enough days in a row, you start to build that habit. And if anybody works out like crazy now, they realize they have to work out now, and it's not it's not such a challenge to get up because they've made
Yeah.
it a habit now. And so it's just mentally being tough and overriding the mind a little bit, and yeah, just keep getting through it, keep pushing, and at the other end of it, I mean, there's a lot of rewards and benefits.
Well, that's what I'm getting at, because so for you're saying the easy thing would be to just listen to your body. And that's probably the most basic and seemingly like best advice. But you got over that mountain enough to be like, no, sometimes your mind or your body will play tricks on you. You can't always just go by how I feel now is the way it's definitely going to be. Or if you were sick before the race or you had the shoulder injury before the race, you can't always listen to those things, even though that seems like the most
Yeah,
obvious.
yeah. Yeah, you gotta. I mean, what are you gonna do when you're coming up to a race and you're sick? You're gonna, oh, I'm gonna sit out.
Yeah.
Of course, unless you're like really bad and you can't even ride. I mean, that's one thing. But yeah, there's many times if you had strep throat, if you had the flu, if you had a fever. I mean, there's so many times like I don't even know how I'm gonna perform tonight, and you just you you don't have a choice. I think it's you don't have a choice. I mean, you can either quit, give up, and move on, or you face it and move forward. I mean, that's the two paths you got. So yeah.
So you mentioned with the Alden program, you have to be consistent. So does that pretty much mean, look, we have to do essentially the same stuff every week? Is that what you were going for?
It wasn't always the same thing. Of course, the tracks, the
Okay.
motos, the sprints, the section work, the starts, all that on the track. I mean, it seems pretty routine, but it's not. I mean, you're constantly a new track, new challenges, all this types of stuff. Our training rides, our gym stuff. I mean, those were always kind of changing, but doing the work consistently and the volume. I mean, I think it's. I realized that. Yeah, of course. When I say, you know, I don't want to say not listen to your body, of course. I
Yeah.
mean, there are things you got to pay attention to, but a lot of the times it was mental for me, and just being consistent with my program. I also had Eldon to monitor that and be like, hey, he'd be like, mate, you're not doing enough here. We can step it up a little bit more, but it wasn't like 3 hours more. It was
Yeah.
just a little bit here and there, or like, hey, we need to back it down this week. We're going to altitude or something like that. So I had that trust in him, so I could just focus on the work. So for me, I think a lot of us guys, we don't have the knowledge of training, like a degree or nothing like that. So somebody who doesn't have that, they're just going to be like, oh, I'm gonna go do an hour bike ride today. Oh, I'm just gonna take it easy today. I'm not gonna do anything. And sometimes it's that's probably not the most beneficial. So I didn't have all that knowledge, but Eldon did, so I could trust that and just do the work and apply myself, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
And
Yeah,
that's
it
what kept
does.
it consistent. So
Right. But I didn't know this. I didn't know that you did change the actual details of it would change throughout a season. And why was that? Was that because you discovered a better way of doing it, or we discovered a weakness that we got to shore up? Why would you're saying the workouts and the riding wasn't exactly the same every week. So why would it change?
as far as it was the same as far as the volume. The bike rides were pretty standard. If we got rained out, we have a little bit more intensity and stuff like that. The gym workouts were constantly changing, and yeah, that was to adapt. Like, hey, you're hunched forward. We need to strengthen your back or
Ah,
something like that. Or we would talk about stuff after outdoor races, especially like, where was your weaknesses? What can we work on and be better on the track? Making sure in the moto that you're applying yourself. If like we talked about a couple weeks ago, like your leg keeps hitting the ground, like, hey, we need to focus on that, bring it up. But as that stuff changed, and we constantly were working on stuff. But as far as putting in the time and the amount of laps, the gym sessions, that bike rides, that that was consistent as far as volume goes. But we weren't doing 2 hours one day, 1 week, and then coming down to 30 minutes one. You know what I'm saying? So it was consistent, but of course, I mean, you're going to have to, the target heart rate and what you're going for changes a little bit.
Okay. No, that's exactly what I'm getting at. So again, we watch from the outside and we're like, man, it's the same Ryan Dungey, like robotic every weekend. But you at the end of the race are like, nah, this wasn't quite as good as it needs to be, or this wasn't as good as it was 2 weeks ago, or I got to get better here. You guys were having those conversations, and then you were trying to find solutions for them. It sounded like literally what, 2 days later on Monday?
Exactly. Yeah. I mean, you race, and then you evaluate, apply yourself, and then, you do that throughout each week, constantly.
Wow. Yeah. So it's not the same. It's not the same. It looks the same on the outside. But for you, could you have a third place that felt totally different than another third place, even though on paper it was the exact same result? Maybe it was even the same 2 guys ahead of you and the same 2 guys behind you.
I mean, a lot of the times I kind of evaluated myself based off of, if it was Villapoto, right? Hey, he beat me by 20 seconds one weekend, or okay, the next week's 10 seconds, and the next week's 5. I mean, I think those gaps you started to see like that. That was kind of for me like a gauging point that I could kind of somewhat go off of. But nobody sees the work really during the week. They just see us on the weekends, and so it's easy to think like, oh, we just do the same thing and whatever. But no, I mean, the race day is actually the fun day. Race day is actually like, okay, we put in the work, we had the fun, or we worked hard, we put in the time. Saturday should be like, let's go enjoy this, and that's nobody sees behind the scenes, and it's a lot of work. Yeah,
I've heard guys say that before. Yeah, on race day, the amount of riding you do on race day, and there's no other training. You're not going on a bicycle ride or going to the gym. So are your other riding days more riding, first of all, than a race day? Is that part of it?
Oh, for sure. I mean, all the time. Every day, basically, as far as the time we put on the bike compared to race day, it's always more. Monday, Tuesday, and Thursday. Each of those days were more than a race day.
And you did other training on those days also?
Yeah. Yep. Wow. Yep. I mean, the big days were outdoors, where we'd have an hour bike ride in the morning, and we'd have 2 35-minute motos. I mean, we would push it, and we'd have the guys, the intensity was there. And then we'd have gym after that. I mean, talk about like, those were some, you were tired at the end of that day for sure.
Right. So the race day is like half of the actual volume.
Wow. Yeah, because you gotta be able to like go, you always like, mentally that was good for me, right? Physically, like you're putting in way more time than you are actually on a race day. Yeah. So race day, those 2 35-minute motos, you should be able to hammer that out, like push it the whole time, and you have to these days. Supercross too. I mean, you should be able to, from the start to finish. I mean, it's like, all out, within, not all out, blow yourself up, but the pace is like really high, and you're pushing it extremely hard.
So I hadn't thought of this. You get a little, like having a cup of coffee right here, you get a little pep in your step, because on race day, or even in the middle of the moto, you're like, this isn't going to be that bad. I did 2:30s and I rode the bike on Tuesday. So surely I can do this final 10 minutes, because I didn't even do the bike ride this morning, and I did all that on Tuesday. Does that actually give you that little bit of, hang on, I can do this?
Yeah. Wow. They say when you're physically stronger, you're mentally stronger, and it's so true, because you're sitting on that line. You did everything you could. You put in the time and then some. I mean, right now it's you're not a thought. It even a thought in your mind. Am I going to be able to make it? And if that's a thought in your mind, then it's like, well, that's one more thing that can take away from your performance, because you're thinking about other things.
Okay, I'm going to ask the $1 million question. You're retired now. You can actually answer this one. Like, in a gnarly outdoor moto, was fatigue a factor? Was it like, man, and you had the best endurance you could possibly have, but you're like, man, if I had 5% more, I could have gone faster in those last 2 laps. Like, at the end of a marathon, no one can sprint at their top speed. In a moto, for a guy in your level of fitness, was it like, I could have gone a little faster, but I was getting tired? Or were you so fit that that wasn't a thing? You could just go all out the whole time?
No, and I want to make that clear. It wasn't
Yeah.
like the 35-minute motos were easy. The
Yeah.
Supercrosses didn't get too, they're relatively short.
Yeah.
But motocross, no, I mean, there was multiple times at the end of the moto. You have to kind of manage that pace a little bit because, like you
Okay.
said, you'll blow up if you don't. If
Okay.
you go too hard. But yeah, there was multiple times at the end of the moto. Last 10 minutes were just suffering.
Really? Okay.
Yeah.
So even at your
Yeah.
level, that no one admits it, so we never know. It just seems like these guys can do 35s or 30 plus 2 in their sleep. Oh no, you're digging.
Oh yeah, no, there's a, there's times where the whole the last 10 minutes, like, dude, I just want to throw in the towel, but you keep going and lap at, you see the 5 laps to go and you're like, dude, I got 5 laps left on the pit board. And but you got to dig. And the fact is, there's races that are 100, it's 100 degrees, it's hot, and the track's tough and it's rough, and yeah, it's physically demanding no matter how much time. Because like we said about the bike, the bike gets better, you're going to keep pushing it more and more and more. The more physically stronger you get, you're going to keep pushing it more and more. So it's a never ending cycle.
No, I've heard riders say that, man. Like, here's the bad thing about training. If you get stronger, they just give you more to do. It never gets easier, right?
Yeah. You're pushing it more, and yeah. So it ain't easy.
No. Okay. So throughout a season, to get back to where we started, these guys had 2 weeks off. Would you have to manage that throughout the year? Would you be like, hey, that's how I felt in January, but now we're in April and it's 15 rounds deep, I feel differently? Or could it be pretty level? Or throughout the season, did you guys have to really work on maintenance and recovery and all that stuff? Or are you pretty much the same, like January through May in Supercross?
The couple months leading into the season, obviously that's boot camp. We're putting a lot of volume. During the whole race season, it's a lot of maintenance. For sure, it's more maintenance than anything. But of course, that was the big thing. If anybody is a 450 rider, they know when they jumped up to the 250 rider, all of a sudden 7-8 rounds in, they're doing more than they used to be doing. They've used to done in the 250s. So they're tired, they're mentally wore out, they think they're physically overtrained. And the fact is, they're just taking on more. But what I'm getting to is that as time went on for me, you'd get those off weekends. And when you'd get them, dude, enjoy them for sure.
Yeah.
And that was a time to like release, let go on, go to the beach a little bit, relax, get a couple days off. I mean, you definitely get a little breather, but I felt that if I had like a total easy week, if Eldon said, Ryan, we're going to take it easy this week and we're going to let you relax, I feel like my performance would suffer, because mentally I feel like I didn't do what I should have done. And two, it's like by being consistent and on top of things day after day after day during the week, you'd show up and you'd be on point. Like, especially you'd be one with the bike. But if I took 5 days off and it was like I jumped on the dirt bike Saturday, I wouldn't feel as great. It's just like something was missing. It would take 2 or 3 practices to get up to speed.
Yeah. So do you think having this 2 weekend break that these guys had, do you think that actually would make a difference? Like, will somebody be feeling different than they did at the last race, essentially 3 weeks ago?
I think the mental aspect, it'll been nice to have a break, but I just was always a guy, once you're in the season, like almost weekends off were tough because you're so in the zone, you just want to keep going, like, and then you have 2 weekends off, especially 2 weekends. It's easy to kind of let your guard down. That was what it was like for me. I don't want to speak for anybody else, but I felt like, dude, if I had 2 weekends off, it would be so easy to let my guard down and kind of lose my edge. That's how I operated. That was me. And so I'd like to just keep going until the off season came.
No, that all makes sense. And it all comes down to this same thing. Like, having that thing that is like difficult to do and then accomplishing it, that feels good. And it's like, clearly you weren't comfortable not having those steps. Like, you wanted to, man, I got to do all this today because at the end of the day, I'm going to feel happy. And then at the end of the week, I'm going to feel happy. Like, you needed to have those steps built in.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah. To any racer, it's the hardest thing you're going to go through, like a career of racing dirt bikes. I mean, there's so many times you're trying to override the mind. You don't want to do it. You don't want to go to the track. You don't want to put on your gear. I mean, there's so many routines, but it's short and it's so brief. And And I look back, and I think people can look back at like, oh wow, like it must have been easy for him to get that, but it was like, it was some of the hardest things that I've ever gone through in my life. But I also realized that now it's also prepared me for after racing, that dude, life after racing ain't easy either.
Yeah.
And then you throw a kid into the mix, and man, talk about being disciplined, putting in the time. I mean, you're a little bit more prepared for that. But yeah, it is hard as heck going through it, for sure.
Yeah, that's what I'm getting at. Now, I said, hey, I had to load up the bike and work on the bike. You're like, oh, I had it easy. I had people to do that. But here's what you're dealing with that guys like me don't have to. I didn't have someone there with a stopwatch and a pit board saying, hey, you're only riding at 80% today. I can ride whatever level I want. I can do as few laps as I want, or as many. If I don't feel like jumping something, I don't have to do it. You had that pressure, because that's the other thing, right? Every day you rode, you had to ride at the same level that you normally rode, right?
Yeah.
That's the hard part.
Yeah, that's a good point you make. I mean, now it's nice to kind of go out and ride and not have the stress of, okay, where are your times at? But at the same time, when through the season and as we're going about it during the week, hey, you're a half second off Marvin. What's going on here? Or
a half second off of yourself from the previous week, right?
Exactly. Yep.
Yeah.
And so you're constantly gauging that. There's always this, like, I don't want to say a cloud, but there's always this like stress on you, like, I have to go faster, I have to get a little bit better, I have to go a little, you're constantly like, I can't relax. I can't ride 80% because that's not going to help. And it's like, so you have that added stress of trying to get better and improving yourself all the time. And if you're not doing that, everybody on your team's like, hey, what's wrong? What's going on? What can we do? How can we get a little better? Do we need to do a little bit of testing? Do we need to look at your physical training? It's like constant evaluation.
But when you're done, when you have a good day or you win a race, I mean, is there anything like that feeling when it's that all that suffering, all that stuff that sucks? Is there anything as good as when it's done and you've done it?
Oh, for sure. I mean, when you're standing there and you're like, the championship, you dream about it, and it's like, it's finally here. I'm holding the trophy, and it's like a win, a championship, whatever that is. It is all everything you went through, worth every bit of it. The only thing that I will say is it's so short-lived, and that's the tough thing, is that it's on to the next. It's on to the next. But when it's all said and done, it's nice to look back at it and see all you have. And at the end of the day, it isn't the most important thing in life, but you applied yourself, you set out a goal, you set out to accomplish a lot of things as a kid, and the fact that you're able to do that, there's a lot of excitement in that. And so I don't want to say it wasn't a great accomplishment, but it also, in respect to what is important in life, it is, it's not everything either. So you gotta enjoy it while it lasts too.
It's okay. I know you're a family man. You can admit that the dirt bike stuff's important. It's okay. We understand.
Yeah, no, it is important for sure. I mean, it's very important because you have so many people who sacrifice so many things, yourself, your family, your team, everything. I mean, it was accomplishment for everybody, but so it is a big thing. Don't get me wrong. It's a huge accomplishment.
Yeah. And I think I've already stumbled on what could be our topic the next time we have some coffee here, which is that, and I've talked to you about this before. I've talked to every rider. It's that weird thing of you accomplish, which is your dream, which is you get paid to ride motorcycles. And then you have to actually make yourself enjoy it, which everyone would think that's automatic. But when you're in it, dude, it's not automatic. Like, it's just pressure. You probably have to remind yourself sometimes, oh, wait, this is the position I always wanted to be in.
Yeah. You bring up a good point. I mean, I think looking back at everything now, the journey, that I think when you're going through the journey, it's hard sometimes, but you have to keep reminding yourself like that's the part that is important.
Right.
The people, everything you're doing. But yeah, no, it ain't easy. But what is, right? I mean, if you're going to go set out and do something in life, I mean, you're going to have a lot of hurdles, a lot of challenges. That's life in general. So I wish somebody would have told me that when I was like 18.
Yeah.
Because when I was challenged at times, I'm sure you were the same way, but like, hey, why am I getting challenged? What's going on? Did I do something wrong? What's going on here? I don't like this, but that's how you grow. So all good.
Yes. Yeah. That's how I'm going to sum this all up. Those struggle points, that's part of what makes the accomplishment feels so good. So sometimes when you don't feel like doing it in the morning, just know that that's like going to make the reward that much better. Don't not do it. Don't take the day off.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yep.
Hey, we did it again. This is good stuff.
Perfect. No, well, thanks for the talk, Weege. Good stuff, buddy.
Yep. Accelerate blend. That's working for me. Once I get through the bag of Accelerate, then I will compare it to Rev. We'll see.
Yeah.
Maybe I like bold and smooth. We'll see.
Yeah, you had a little more pep in your step this morning. I like it.
It did. What are you drinking, man?
I got Accelerate.
You got Accelerate. All right.
Yeah.
Good for the mornings. All right, Ryan Dungey, thanks for the insight. We'll do this again. This has been pretty fun. And this is like, people spend thousands of dollars on like therapy bills. We're just giving it to people for free. We're giving them mental coaching and all that for free.
That's all right. I like that.
Okay.